As this new interview reveals, Fulford had already openly predicted that such an attack against Japan could occur, namely an earthquake that would then set off nuclear reactors. This is exactly what happened, and it significantly added credibility to Fulford's testimony. Fulford had said this attack was a punishment to Japan for cutting off the flow of many billions of dollars that had been in place since exploitive no-bid reconstruction contracts were slapped on them after World War II. This financial cutoff began in 2008, and was one of the key factors that led to the financial paralysis of many key old world order companies in the Lehman shock later that year. These companies had cheated death for too long in the madcap world of derivatives trading. After Fukushima, the Prime Minister, Heizo Takenaka, apparently did give money to the old world order after he was threatened that an additional attack would occur, setting off the Mount Fuji volcano directly outside Tokyo, if he did not comply. This was covered in some detail in my most recent interview with Fulford. The underground-based story of this extraterrestrial intervention against the old world order, and the progress towards disclosure, seemed to go quiet after Fukushima for the next 5 months. However, this all changed on the day my book was released, August 23, 2011. On this very day, the East Coast was rocked by the largest earthquake in a century, and it had very unusual characteristics. The peculiar properties of this quake were all extremely consistent with what we see after an underground nuclear explosion. It was at a shallow depth, had no build-up but suddenly arrived at maximum intensity. It shook a very large area of the Earth for its size, and had very few aftershocks. See Part 1 of Disclosure Imminent, featuring my Fulford interview, for the details. This graphic compares the sudden onset of the DC quake in comparison to the seismic pattern of a more typical quake. This is, and will continue to be for the foreseeable future, the only tangible proof we will have to back up what the insiders are telling us occurred below ground. However, if a mass announcement is made, as Fulford is indicating, this may all come out in the open. I have since spoken with personnel who have visited the damage firsthand. I have no significant reason to doubt what they are telling me, based on the impeccable credibility and trust that has been built up with these people over time. These strikes have dealt critical, mortal blows to Majestic. It is as if the brains have been removed from the body. It is the greatest single surprise in this entire behind-the-scenes war, since the dawn of the UFO cover-up, and it was still only the first volley. Symbolic importance. Interestingly, this earthquake also cracked the pyramidion on top of the Washington Monument. Symbolically, this represented the cracking of the eye of the Illuminati, indicating their ever-increasingly imminent downfall. The Colorado earthquake from barely a day earlier was apparently due to another very major underground facility being wiped out, which was directly connected to the Denver airport. The facility near Washington, D.C. was where many government personnel and insiders planned on fleeing to in the event of an emergency, such as a public revealing of their culpability in high crimes and misdemeanors. Apparently, many of them had lavish private quarters in this facility, complete with personal belongings, all of which were wiped out. Similarly, the facility under the ground in Colorado was massive, and had a great deal of supplies. I've now had multiple points of confirmation from every key insider I know that these bases were indeed wiped out on August 22nd and 23rd. Fulford confirms when the rumors first surfaced that underground facilities had been destroyed, I had no idea if it was true, nor did the insiders. It seemed almost too good to be true that this had all happened on the same day the source field book came out. It also seemed hard to believe that such a massive strike could have occurred against old world order bases. Nonetheless, as time went on, various insiders I knew were briefed about what had happened, and over a few weeks of time, the big picture came together. Fulford's own sources independently corroborated what I had heard. The stories are not exactly the same, as you will read in this interview, but there are many similarities between them, and somewhere in there is likely to be the truth. I have since heard that no radiation was found in these bases, and the damage is consistent with a 20-fold increase in air pressure that occurred spontaneously. Later on, audio recordings were recovered from within the bases, revealing that for 24 hours prior to the explosions, there were sounds of furniture sliding all over the floor and people yelling and screaming. It does appear that all the personnel in these bases were portaled to a safe location, along with the material they need to survive. 6 more bases taken out after the first 2 bases were cleared out. 6 additional bases were hit around the world. This information also did not appear right away, but took weeks to surface. Other reports had surfaced from various sources online, of questionable credibility, indicating the number had been anywhere from 4 to 13. No one else online had the figure of 6 that I had heard. Many additional bases have been taken out since THE, and I didn't find out until mid-October that at the very end of September, a surprisingly large number of additional bases were cleared out. I was asked not to give the number of how many were affected, but I do have it. I was very surprised and actually moved to tears when I heard this. The whole story is covered in Part 2 of the Disclosure Imminent series. At that moment, I really knew this was rapidly paving the way for some very positive changes in the world. I also felt badly for all the employees who were not being told of the imminent risks they faced by continuing to work at these jobs. In each of these cases, all personnel and materials have been removed from the bases, but the facilities themselves are still intact. There's just nothing left in them. No furniture, no supplies and no personnel. Just totally blank and empty rooms. Since information doesn't always come right away, there could very well have been even more bases taken out since the major attack at the end of September, but we will have to find out in time. Massive hiring binge in Colorado. I also had email come in from a woman in Colorado who is on an official, subscription-based job posting service. She was stunned, in the last week, to see a massive number of new job listings appear. I still have a huge body of data to sort through with this, but it would appear that there is a hiring frenzy going on for just about every position you could think of that would be necessary to run an underground facility in Colorado, including waste management. The job descriptions describe challenges for the employee, like the ability to live and work for long periods of time alone, without sunlight, not to mention a security clearance. This has become part of the big picture I now need to tie in. It is not direct proof or evidence of the destruction of an underground facility, but the timing is extremely interesting in light of the information that is now surfacing from multiple sources. As tempting as the job sounded, our friend did not take the bait. The last thing she wants is to end up disappearing to wherever these people are going to on the other end of the portal, though it is probably a harmless place. I do believe they will all be safely returned once this whole situation finally clears up for the good. Nonetheless, I was stunned at the sheer size and complexity of the list of suspicious new job postings that just appeared this past week in Colorado. What is going on here? According to many credible whistleblowers who came forward in a mass, public event last year, the old world order has experienced ETs monitoring and even powering down their nuclear facilities ever since the original Trinity test. No overtly hostile actions were taken, but it seemed clear that they would be prevented from ever actually using nukes. It is unfortunate that so many people lived in fear of nuclear war for so long, given that very powerful ETs were protecting Earth and ensuring this could never actually happen. However, the old world order were still allowed to perpetrate many elaborate disasters, including, perhaps most notably, 9/11. This led them to believe they could do whatever they wanted and could not be stopped. This has all changed with the advent of China's October Surprise, an ET-assisted military campaign that has now dealt critical blows to the powers that were, leaving them reeling in agony and unable to defend themselves with any real significance now. They may still be allowed to create additional small-scale problems for a while longer. It is important to remember that the ETs have a non-intervention policy. They are not just going to show up in our skies and do all the work for us. We have to finish the job or Sylvester do believe the ETs are able to intervene up to a point where it becomes actually feasible for the old world order to be defeated, and formally charged with their crimes against humanity. According to Fulford and other sources, just days before the destruction of the first 2 underground facilities, 57 countries met in international waters, off the coast of Monaco, to discuss the rebooting of the world's financial system. World leaders were shown photographs, video, maps and blueprints of underground facilities, and told that these were built so that if the old world order created a nuclear holocaust on the Earth's surface, they could live in this breakaway civilization underground. It was collectively decided, and agreed, that a new financial system would be introduced, backed entirely by solid assets rather than creating zeros in a computer. This will effectively destroy much of the corruption now plaguing the existing system, and significantly improve the quality of life for everyone on Earth. This is only a transitional stage to a system in which money will be completely needless. The difference from how things are now is almost unimaginable. The detail of explaining this future scenario credibly requires a whole new article, which I have been working on. Interesting connections. One of the main people responsible for this new international economic recovery plan, behind the scenes, has also been in contact with one of my own key insiders. I'd heard independent chatter about this plan for the last year and a half, and had no idea that this was the same thing Fulford had gotten involved in. I didn't even realize that Fulford and my source were talking about the same person and the same plan until I gave my source a detailed summary of what Fulford has been saying. I was told that the issue was so sensitive that he wouldn't have told me anything about it at all, but since everything I told him was right on, I already knew everything, and there was no harm in confirming that it was all true. The only discrepancy was that when my insider last heard about it, only 50 countries had signed on. Nonetheless, this was more than 2 weeks before the final meeting, so it all fit very nicely. According to Fulford, fully 100 countries have now agreed to it. Things are getting really exciting. No, it is very exciting to see this story taking shape. I highly recommend reading my previous article post in David's blog, here on divinacosmos.com, if you want to chart the unfolding of this intriguing saga and follow up with the links. I'm still recovering from a nasty flu virus I caught in Arizona, which continued to drag me down when I spoke at the New Life Expo in New York, and almost completely lost my voice that Sunday. Since then, I've been forced to take it easy. My next large article is mostly complete, and will summarize the story up until now with links, but this is a more involved research work. I continue to speak with the insiders when possible, and track Fulford's latest updates every Monday morning on his paid blog, benjaminfulford.net, which is well worth the cost of subscription to support this noble cause. At this point, given how sensitive things are, I consider every significant public statement Fulford makes to be worthy of documentation. I transcribed the new interview. We found out Monday morning that Fulford had given an interview with Sean David Morton, who had moderated the Strange Universe panel I just spoke on in New York. Since I can transcribe almost as fast as I can listen, I got my fingers working as I tuned in. I popped in my own comments in brackets, with my initials DW, where appropriate. There have been 3 more updates from Fulford since he gave this interview, and I will highlight the most significant points, but this is still pretty current stuff. What you are about to read may seem a lot more mundane than what I've been discussing, but I have now given you the greater context through which I view everything I'm seeing, hearing and reading. Introduction to Ben Fulford. Link to Fulford/Morton interview provided in blog. He's sold over 500,000 non-fiction books written in Japanese. He has produced a comprehensive catalog in fields ranging from business to yakuza gangsters to high finance to government corruption.